Get out, Akosua, you're a burden. Lucas Warrick's voice sliced through the morning air, his sneer cold as the Atlanta sun glared on the modern house's steps. Akosua Mensah, radiant despite her weariness, stood clutching her newborn twin girls, Amma and Adwoa, swaddled in her cream-colored shawl. Her long, straight hair swayed as tears stung her eyes. Lucas and Camille Moreau, her treacherous best friend, stood triumphant, their smug laughter echoing as they mocked her for bearing daughters. Girls, worthless, Camille taunted, flaunting Akosua's stolen Ghanaian heirloom necklace. The door slammed shut, leaving Akosua alone. Would she reclaim her life from this betrayal? Could her love for her daughters defy their cruelty? The truth lies in the shadows ahead. The Atlanta sun cast sharp rays through the towering glass windows of the modern Buckhead home, its sleek lines and polished wood floors gleaming with a sterile beauty that now felt like a cage to Akosua Mensah. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine from a diffuser, but it did nothing to mask the bitterness of betrayal. Akosua stood frozen on the steps where Lucas Warrick and Camille Moreau had just cast her out, her newborn twins, Amma and Adwoa, nestled against her chest, their tiny breaths a fragile anchor to her unraveling world. Her long, straight hair clung to her tear-streaked face, the cream-colored shawl slipping as she gripped her daughters tighter. The door's slam still echoed in her ears, each thud a reminder of Lucas's words, "You're a burden." She glanced back at the house, its white walls and minimalist decor a monument to the life she'd built with Lucas. 5 years ago, they'd stood in this very living room, laughing as they hung a Ghanaian kente cloth on the wall, a symbol of their blended dreams. Now that cloth was likely stuffed in a closet, replaced by Camille's smug presence. Akosua's fingers brushed the empty spot on her neck where her grandmother's heirloom necklace should have been, stolen by Camille, who'd worn it like a trophy. The betrayal cut deeper than the loss of the house, deeper than Lucas's cruel dismissal of their daughters as worthless for being girls. Her knees trembled, but she forced herself to move, stepping onto the manicured lawn. The Buckhead neighborhood, with its pristine driveways and whispering oaks, watched in silence. A neighbor's curtain twitched, eyes peering, but offering no help. Akosua's heart pounded as Amma let out a soft whimper, her tiny face flushed. Adwoa stirred, her small hand curling against the shawl. They were all she had now, and she'd protect them, no matter the cost. She walked, each step heavier than the last, toward the bus stop at the corner of Peachtree Road. The city's hum, car horns, distant laughter felt alien, as if Atlanta itself had turned its back on her. She'd met Lucas at a jazz club downtown, his charm disarming her defenses, his promises of forever sealing their bond. How had it come to this? Camille's laughter rang in her memory. Those venomous words, girls, worthless, twisting the knife. Akosua's mind raced, piecing together the months of Lucas's late nights, his excuses about client dinners. Had Camille been there all along, plotting in the shadows? At the bus stop, she sank onto a bench, her arms aching from cradling the twins. A woman in a tailored suit glanced at her, then away, as if Akosua's pain was contagious. She pulled out her phone, its cracked screen a relic of better days. No messages, no missed calls. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, a memory from a call to Ghana. Akosua, you carry our strength. Never forget. But strength felt distant now, buried under the weight of rejection. The bus hissed to a stop, and Akosua boarded, ignoring the stares at her disheveled appearance. She settled near the back, rocking Amma and Adwoa gently. A man across the aisle, his dreadlocks tied back, offered a kind nod. "Rough day?" he asked softly. "You could say that," Akosua replied, her voice hoarse. She didn't elaborate. How could she explain the wreckage of her life in a sentence? The man didn't press, just handed her a bottle of water from his bag. "For the little ones," he said, then turned away, giving her space. The bus rumbled toward downtown Atlanta, the skyline looming like a promise she no longer trusted. Akosua's thoughts drifted to the hospital where she'd given birth just days ago. The nurses' smiles, the joy of holding her girls. Lucas had been there, his eyes distant even then, but she'd chalked it up to nerves. Now she saw it clearly. He'd already chosen Camille, already planned to erase her. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret fighting us," it read. Her stomach churned. Lucas or Camille? The threat was clear, but so was her resolve. She deleted the message, her fingers trembling. They'd taken her home, her necklace, her trust, but they wouldn't take her spirit. The bus stopped near a shelter in downtown Atlanta, its faded sign reading, Hope Haven. Akosua stepped off, the twins' warmth grounding her. The shelter's brick facade was worn, but voices spilled out. Women laughing, a child's giggle. It was a lifeline, a place to start over. She pushed open the door, met by the smell of coffee and the gaze of a woman at the desk, her eyes warm but wary. "Need a place to stay?" the woman asked, her voice steady. "Yes," Akosua said, straightening despite her exhaustion. "For me and my daughters." The woman, whose name tag read Maya, nodded. "We've got room. Come on in." She led Akosua to a small cot in a shared room, where other women moved quietly, some cradling children, others staring into space. Maya handed her a blanket, her touch gentle. "You're safe here," she said. "Whatever happened, you're not alone." Akosua settled the twins on the cot, their tiny faces peaceful in sleep. She brushed a hand over her hair, still long and straight but now tangled with the morning's chaos. The cream shawl, stained with tears, draped over her shoulders like a shield. She thought of her grandmother's stories, tales of Ghanaian women who'd faced impossible odds and triumphed. "You are enough," her grandmother had said, pressing the heirloom necklace into her hands years ago. That necklace was gone, but its meaning wasn't. She overheard two women whispering nearby, their voices low but sharp. "Heard her husband threw her out," one said. "For having girls? That's cold." Akosua's cheeks burned, but she didn't correct them. Let the rumors spread. She'd rewrite her story herself. Maya returned with a cup of tea. "You look like you've been through hell," she said, sitting beside Akosua. "Want to talk?" "Not yet," Akosua replied, her voice firmer now. "But I will. Soon." Maya nodded, her eyes holding a knowing glint. "When you're ready, we're here. Some of us have been where you are." She gestured to a bulletin board covered with flyers, job listings, legal aid, support groups. Akosua's gaze lingered on one. Free legal clinic for women. A spark ignited in her chest. Lucas and Camille thought they'd broken her, but they'd underestimated her fire. As night fell, the shelter's hum became a lullaby for Amma and Adwoa. Akosua sat by their cot, her fingers tracing their tiny hands. She whispered a Ghanaian proverb her mother taught her. "The river cuts through rock, not by force, but by persistence." She'd be that river, carving a path through this pain. Lucas's threat, Camille's cruelty, they'd face consequences. She'd take back her home, her necklace, her life. But for now she'd rest, her daughter's breaths a reminder of why she'd fight. The shelter's lights dimmed, and Akosua closed her eyes, the weight of the day settling into her bones. Tomorrow she'd begin. Tomorrow she'd rise. The dim glow of a single bulb flickered above Akosua Mensah's cot in Hope Haven, casting shadows that danced like ghosts across the worn brick walls. The shelter's hum, soft murmurs, a distant cough, the creak of a mattress wrapped around her, a fragile cocoon for her fractured heart. Amma and Adwoa slept soundly, their tiny chests rising and falling beneath the cream-colored shawl, now frayed at the edges. Akosua's long, straight hair fell over her face as she leaned closer, her breath sinking with theirs, a tether to the only love she could still trust. Her fingers trembled, tracing the space on her neck where her grandmother's heirloom necklace once hung. Camille's taunting smile, flaunting that stolen treasure, burned in her memory, as did Lucas's cold dismissal. "You're a burden." The words clawed at her, threatening to unravel the strength she clung to. She shifted, the cot squeaking under her weight, and pulled the blanket tighter around her daughters. Exhaustion weighed her down, but sleep was a stranger. Her mind churned, replaying the morning's brutality. The way Lucas's eyes, once warm with promises, had turned to ice. The way Camille's laugh had sliced through her like a blade. How long had they planned this? When had their whispers in dark corners turned into a plot to erase her? Akosua's chest tightened, a mix of rage and grief threatening to choke her. She wanted to scream, to storm back to that Buckhead house and demand answers. But the weight of her twins anchored her to this moment, this cot, this fight for survival. Maya's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. Can't sleep? She stood at the edge of the cot, her silhouette framed by the faint light. Her braided hair was pulled back, and her eyes held a quiet understanding that made Akosua's throat tighten. Not tonight, Akosua whispered, her voice raw. Too much. Everything. Maya sat on the cot's edge, careful not to wake the twins. I've seen that look before, she said, like the world's chewed you up and spit you out. But you're still here, aren't you? That's something. Akosua managed a faint nod, her fingers brushing Adwoa's cheek. They're all I have left, she said, her voice cracking. He took everything. My home, my trust, even my grandmother's necklace. And for what? Because I gave him daughters? Maya's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing with a shared anger. Some men break what they can't control, she said, and some women, they rebuild stronger. She handed Akosua a worn notebook from her pocket. Write it down. The pain, the anger, all of it. It'll keep you sane. Akosua took the notebook, its pages yellowed but inviting. She hadn't written since her college days, when she'd dreamed of being a nurse who penned stories of resilience. Now the idea felt like a lifeline. Thank you, she said, her voice steadier. Maya's kindness was a spark in the darkness, a reminder that she wasn't alone, even if her heart screamed otherwise. The shelter stirred as morning approached, the air thick with the scent of instant coffee and hope born of necessity. Akosua opened the notebook, her hands shaking as she wrote, They took my home, but not my fire. The words felt like a vow, a promise to Amma and Adwoa, to herself. She thought of her mother in Ghana, her voice a distant echo. You are the daughter of warriors. That strength pulsed in her now, fragile but growing. A soft cry from Amma pulled her back. Akosua lifted her daughter, rocking her gently, the baby's warmth soothing the ache in her chest. Adwoa stirred, her tiny hand reaching out, and Akosua's heart swelled with a fierce love that drowned out the pain, if only for a moment. She hummed a Ghanaian lullaby, the melody low and soothing, its notes carrying memories of her grandmother's kitchen, where stories of survival were woven into every meal. Across the room, a young woman named Lena watched, her own toddler asleep in her arms. You've got a gift, Lena said, her voice quiet. That song, it's like it holds your babies close, even when you're breaking. Akosua's eyes met Lena's, and she saw a mirror of her own pain. Different story, same weight. It's all I can give them right now, she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. But it's not enough. They deserve more than this. They've got you, Lena replied. That's more than most. She hesitated, then added, I heard what happened. Word spreads fast here. You don't have to talk, but if you do, we listen. Akosua nodded, gratitude warming her chest, though the wound of betrayal still bled. She didn't want to talk, not yet. The shame of being cast out, of standing on those Buckhead steps while neighbors watched, was too raw. But Lena's words, like Maya's, planted a seed. She wasn't invisible here. She wasn't worthless. The morning unfolded in a blur of shelter routines, feeding schedules, shared bathrooms, the clatter of trays in the communal kitchen. Akosua fed Amma and Adwoa, her hands steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her. She noticed a flyer on the wall. Legal aid for women, free consultations. Her pulse quickened. Could she fight Lucas and Camille? Could she reclaim the home they'd stolen, the necklace that carried her grandmother's spirit? She overheard two women at the kitchen table, their voices low but sharp. Her husband threw her out for having girl, one whispered. And her best friend? In on it. Stole her necklace too. The other shook her head. She'll fight back. You see it in her eyes. Akosua's cheeks burned, but their words stirred something fierce within her. They saw her strength, even when she doubted it herself. She tucked the flyer's number into her pocket, a small act of defiance against the despair threatening to swallow her. Lucas's text from yesterday, "You'll regret fighting us," flashed in her mind, but she pushed it away. Let him threaten. She'd face him, Not as the broken woman he'd cast out, but as a mother, a warrior. As the shelter bustled, Akosua sat back on her cot, the notebook open in her lap. She wrote again, her words spilling out like a river breaking free. They thought they could bury me. They forgot I'm a seed. The act of writing steadied her, each stroke of the pen a reclaiming of her voice. She looked at Amma and Adwoa, their faces serene in sleep, and felt a fire ignite. Lucas and Camille had underestimated her, but she'd show them. She'd rise, not for revenge, but for her daughters, for the legacy she carried in her blood. The shelter's noise faded as Akosua closed her eyes, the lullaby still humming in her throat. She wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but she was ready to fight. The road ahead was uncertain, but with her twins in her arms and a community forming around her, she felt the first stirrings of hope. She'd carve a path through this pain, one step at a time, and no one, not Lucas, not Camille, would stop her. The scent of stale coffee and disinfectant clung to the air in Hope Haven's communal room, where Akosua Mensah sat, her twins cradled close. Amma's soft coos and Adwoa's gentle stirrings were a lifeline, grounding her as her heart wrestled with the wreckage of Lucas Warrick's betrayal. Her long, straight hair fell in tangles over her cream-colored shawl, now stained with the grime of survival, but her eyes burned with a fire that refused to fade. The notebook Maya had given her lay open, its pages filled with jagged words of pain and defiance, but they couldn't silence the echo of Camille Moreau's venom. Girls? Worthless. Akosua's chest tightened, each breath a battle against the shame of standing on those buckhead steps, cast out like refuse. Yet beneath the hurt, a resolve took root. She'd uncover the truth, no matter how sharp it cut. Morning light spilled through a cracked window, illuminating the shelter's bustle. Women folding blankets, children giggling over mismatched toys. Akosua's fingers brushed the space where her grandmother's heirloom necklace once rested, its absence a wound as raw as Lucas's words. You're a burden. She'd trusted him, loved him, built a life with him in that sleek Atlanta home, only to find it was a house of lies. How long had Camille's claws been in him? The question gnawed at her, fueling a restless need to know. She glanced at the legal aid flyer tucked in her pocket, its promise of justice a faint beacon. But justice felt distant when her phone buzzed with another anonymous text. Drop it, or you'll lose more than a house. Her pulse raced. Was it Lucas, Camille, or both? Fear clawed at her, but she shoved it down, her love for Amma and Adwoa stronger than any threat. She kissed their foreheads, whispering, You're my everything, her voice trembling with a mother's fierce vow. Maya appeared, her braids swaying as she carried a tray of toast and juice. You look like you're carrying the world, she said, setting the tray beside Akosua. Eat. You need strength for those girls. Akosua managed a weak smile, taking a slice. Strength feels like a dream, she admitted, her voice low. They took everything, Maya. My home, my necklace, my trust. And for what? Because my babies are girls? Maya's eyes darkened, her hand resting on Akosua's shoulder. They're cowards, she said. They hurt you because you're stronger than they'll ever be. Don't let their poison sink in. The words stirred something in Akosua, a flicker of the warrior her grandmother had raised her to be. She thought of the Ghanaian stories she'd heard as a child, of women who turned pain into power. But the weight of betrayal pressed harder, and doubt whispered, What if they're right? What if I'm not enough? Lena, the young mother from yesterday, joined them, her toddler tugging at her sleeve. Heard you got a lawyer's number, she said, nodding toward the flyer. You gonna fight them? The ones who did this? I have to, Akosua said, her voice steadier now. Not just for me, but for them. She looked at her twins, their innocent faces a reminder of her purpose. But I need to know how deep this goes. Lucas, Camille, they planned this. Lena leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Check his email. Men like that? They're sloppy. Bet he left a trail. The idea hit Akosua like a spark. Lucas had always been careless with his phone, leaving it unlocked on the kitchen counter. Could she still access his accounts? Her heart raced at the thought, a mix of dread and determination. She hadn't touched his email in years, respecting his privacy, but that trust was dead now. With Amma and Adwoa napping, Akosua borrowed Maya's old laptop, its keys sticky from use. Her hands shook as she logged into Lucas's email, using a password he'd once shared during happier times. The inbox loaded, a flood of messages from clients, but one name stood out: Camille. Dozens of emails stretching back months before Akosua's pregnancy had even shown. She clicked one, her breath catching. "Meet me tonight," Camille had written, her words laced with a familiarity that turned Akosua's stomach. Another email, dated weeks before the twins' birth. "She's too wrapped up in those babies. It's time." Lucas's reply was a single line. "Agreed, let's move forward." Move forward with what? Stealing her home? Her life? Each email was a dagger, revealing a plot that began when Akosua was still glowing with hope for her family. They'd planned to push her out, to claim the house, to mock her for her daughters. Tears streamed down her face, but she kept reading, her anger growing sharper than her pain. One email mentioned her necklace. "It's mine now," Camille wrote, attaching a photo of herself wearing it, her smile cruel. Lucas's response: "Looks better on you." Akosua slammed the laptop shut, her chest heaving. The shelter's noise faded, replaced by a roaring in her ears. They hadn't just betrayed her, they'd orchestrated her destruction, reveling in it. Her hands clenched, nails digging into her palms. She wanted to confront them, to scream until they felt her pain, but the twins' soft breaths pulled her back. She couldn't lose herself to rage, not when Amma and Adwoa needed her. Maya noticed her distress, hurrying over. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice urgent. "They planned it all," Akosua choked out. "Months ago. They wanted me gone." She showed Maya the emails, her voice breaking. "They took my necklace, my home, because I gave them daughters." Maya's face hardened, her hand gripping Akosua's. "They're monsters," she said, "but you're not alone. We'll fight this together." Akosua nodded, wiping her tears. The emails were proof she could use with the legal aid clinic. She'd call them today, take the first step toward justice. But the pain lingered, a weight she couldn't shake. She looked at her twins, their tiny hands curled in sleep, and felt a surge of love that eclipsed her grief. "You're not worthless," she whispered to them. "You're my world." As the shelter settled into the afternoon, Akosua tucked the laptop away, her resolve hardening. Lucas and Camille thought they'd broken her, but they'd only awakened her. She'd fight not for revenge, but for her daughters, for the legacy in her blood. The truth was out, and it was a weapon she'd wield with precision. 842 words. The faint hum of Hope Haven's communal room faded as Akosua Mensah clutched the legal aid flyer, its edges creased from her tightening grip. Amma and Adwoa slept in her arms, their soft breaths a quiet rhythm against the storm raging in her heart. Her long, straight hair, now tangled and heavy, spilled over the cream-colored shawl, its stains a map of her survival. The emails she'd uncovered burned in her mind. Lucas Warrick and Camille Moreau's calculated betrayal, their cruel words about her daughters, the theft of her grandmother's heirloom necklace. Each revelation was a fresh wound, but the pain fueled a fire within her, a resolve to confront the ones who'd torn her world apart. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Amma and Adwoa, for the legacy they'd inherit. The morning air was sharp as Akosua stepped out of the shelter, the Atlanta skyline looming like a distant judge. She'd called the legal aid clinic, securing an appointment for tomorrow, but the weight of those emails demanded action now. She couldn't wait, couldn't let Lucas and Camille think they'd won. Maya had offered to watch the twins, but Akosua refused. She needed her daughters with her, their presence a shield against the fear gnawing at her. She boarded a bus back to Buckhead, her heart pounding with each mile closer to the house that was no longer hers. The thought of facing Lucas and Camille made her stomach churn, but the image of her necklace on Camille's throat pushed her forward. She'd demand it back, demand answers, even if it broke her. The bus stopped near Peachtree Road, and Akosua stepped onto the familiar street. the manicured lawns and sleek homes mocking her with their perfection. The house loomed ahead, its glass windows glinting like eyes that saw her shame. She adjusted the shawl, cradling Amma and Adwoa, their warmth steadying her trembling hands. Her beauty, once a source of pride, felt fragile now, but her love for her daughters was unbreakable. She climbed the steps, each one a memory of happier days, Lucas carrying her over the threshold, their laughter echoing. Now those memories were poison. She knocked, the sound sharp against the morning's quiet. The door swung open and Lucas stood there, his face a mask of surprise that quickly hardened. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped, his voice low but venomous. His eyes flicked to the twins and a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed his face before vanishing. "I want my necklace," Akosua said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "And I want the truth." "Why, Lucas? Why did you do this?" He laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You're pathetic coming back to beg. You and those girls." He stopped, his gaze darting behind him as Camille appeared, her presence like a shadow creeping into the light. She wore Akosua's heirloom necklace, the gold gleaming against her skin, a deliberate taunt. "Akosua, darling," Camille purred, her smile sharp as glass. "You look worn. Shouldn't you be at some shelter, playing the victim?" Her eyes glinted with malice, but Akosua saw a crack in her facade, a nervous glance at Lucas, a hint of fear. "I'm not here to play," Akosua said, her voice rising, fueled by months of suppressed pain. "You stole my home, my necklace, my life. You planned this, didn't you? I saw the emails, Camille. Months of lies, months of you two tearing me apart." Lucas's face paled, his jaw tightening. "You hacked my email?" he growled, stepping closer. "You've got no right." "No right?" Akosua's voice broke, raw with fury. "I gave you everything, Lucas. My love, my trust, this house, our daughters. And you throw us out because they're girls? Because I'm not enough for you?" Tears streamed down her face, but she stood tall, the twins' weight grounding her. Camille laughed, but it was strained, her fingers brushing the necklace. "You're nothing, Akosua. Just a naive girl from Ghana who thought she could fit in here. Those daughters? They're a liability, not a legacy." The words hit like a slap, but Akosua's anger burned brighter. "You don't get to decide their worth," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You don't get to take my heritage." She stepped forward, her eyes locked on Camille. "Give me my necklace. Now!" Camille's smirk faltered, but she crossed her arms. "Or what? You'll cry to the police? You've got nothing, Akosua. No proof, no power." Lucas grabbed Akosua's arm, his grip bruising. "Leave, or I'll make sure you regret coming back," he hissed. Amma whimpered, and Akosua's heart lurched. She yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice a promise. "Both of you. I'm not the woman you think you broke." She turned, cradling her daughters, and walked down the steps, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and defiance. The neighbors' curtains twitched again, their silent judgment a weight she refused to carry. As she reached the sidewalk, a car pulled up, and Maya stepped out, her face etched with concern. "I couldn't stay back," she said. "You okay?" Akosua shook her head, tears falling freely now. "They planned it all," she whispered. "They wanted me gone from the start." She looked at Amma and Adwoa, their innocent faces a reminder of her purpose. "But I faced them. I'm not invisible." Maya hugged her, careful not to disturb the twins. "You're a damn warrior," she said, "and you're not fighting alone." Akosua nodded, her resolve hardening. The confrontation hadn't given her the necklace or the house, but it had given her something more. Clarity. Lucas and Camille thought they'd won, but they'd only ignited her strength. She'd go to the legal aid clinic tomorrow, armed with the emails, ready to fight. For now, she held her daughters close, their warmth a beacon in the dark. She whispered a Ghanaian proverb, her voice soft but fierce. "The fire in the heart burns hotter than the flame outside." She'd burn brighter than their cruelty, for Amma, for Adwoa, for herself. The faint hum of Hope Haven's communal room enveloped Akosua Mensah as she sat on her cot, the weight of yesterday's confrontation with Lucas Warrick and Camille Moreau still pressing against her chest. Amma and Adwoa slept in her arms, their tiny faces serene beneath the frayed, cream-colored shawl, a stark contrast to the storm raging within her. Her long, straight hair fell in tangled strands, framing eyes that burned with a mix of grief and defiance. The memory of Camille's taunting smirk, her grandmother's heirloom necklace glinting on that traitor's throat, fueled a fire in Akosua's soul. Lucas's bruising grip, his threat to make her regret returning, echoed in her mind. But so did her own words. "I'm not the woman you think you broke." That vow pulsed through her, a lifeline amid the wreckage. The shelter's morning bustle, clinking mugs, soft laughter, the shuffle of weary feet, felt like a distant hum as Akosua clutched the legal aid flyer, its crumpled edges a testament to her resolve. She'd faced Lucas and Camille, stood tall on those buckhead steps, and though she'd left empty-handed, she'd reclaimed a piece of her courage. Now she needed more than defiance. She needed a plan. The twins stirred, Adwoa's tiny hand curling against her chest, and Akosua's heart ached with a love so fierce it drowned out the pain, if only for a moment. She whispered to them, "We'll take it all back," her voice trembling with a mother's promise. Maya's voice cut through her thoughts, warm but firm. "You ready for today?" She stood by the cot, her braids pulled back, a paper cup of coffee in hand. "That legal clinic won't wait." Akosua nodded, her throat tight. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they don't believe me? What if Lucas and Camille have already won?" Maya knelt beside her, her eyes steady. "They haven't won," she said. "You're still standing, aren't you? And those girls?" She glanced at Amma and Adwoa. "They're proof you're stronger than their lies." The words wrapped around Akosua like a lifeline, easing the knot of fear in her chest. She thought of her grandmother's stories, tales of Ghanaian women who'd faced betrayal and rose like phoenixes. That legacy lived in her, in the twins, in every beat of her heart. She tucked the flyer into her pocket, kissed her daughter's foreheads, and stood, her legs steadier than they'd been in days. The legal aid clinic was a short bus ride away, in a modest office tucked between a deli and a pawn shop in downtown Atlanta. The waiting room smelled of old carpet and hope, its chairs filled with women whose eyes mirrored Akosua's, worn but unbroken. She adjusted the shawl, cradling Amma and Adwoa, their warmth anchoring her as she waited. Her mind replayed the email she'd found, Lucas's cold agreement to Camille's plan. "Let's move forward." The words were a knife, but they were also evidence, proof of their betrayal she'd present today. A woman in a navy blazer called her name, her voice kind but brisk. "Ms. Mensah, I'm Ms. Harper, your caseworker." Akosua followed her into a small office, its walls lined with legal books and faded posters about justice. She settled the twins in a borrowed stroller, her hands trembling as she handed over printed copies of the emails. Ms. Harper scanned the pages, her brow furrowing. "This is damning," she said, her tone measured. "They planned to push you out and manipulated property records. And this necklace? Sentimental value?" "It's my grandmother's," Akosua said, her voice cracking. "From Ghana. It's all I had of her, and Camille took it, like she took everything else." Tears welled, but she forced them back, her love for her daughters stealing her spine. "They threw me out because I had girls, called them worthless." Ms. Harper's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "That's not just betrayal, it's theft, fraud. We can build a case, but it won't be easy. They'll fight dirty." "Let them," Akosua said, her voice low and fierce. "I'm not backing down." The words surprised her, their strength a spark she hadn't felt in weeks. She saw Lucas's sneer, Camille's mocking laugh, and channeled them into resolve. She'd fight for her home, her necklace, her daughter's future. Ms. Harper nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll start with a temporary restraining order to keep them from selling the house, and we'll file for property recovery. You've got a strong case, Miss Mensah, but it'll take time." Time. The word hung heavy, a reminder of the nights she'd spent in the shelter, the days she'd face alone. But Akosua thought of Amma and Adwoa, their innocent eyes, and knew time was a price she'd pay. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice steady now. Back at Hope Haven, the afternoon sun filtered through the cracked window, casting a warm glow over the communal room. Akosua sat with Lena, who'd become a quiet ally, sharing stories of their children. "You went to that clinic?" Lena asked, rocking her toddler. "I did," Akosua said, feeding Adwoa a bottle. "They believe me. It's a start." Her heart lifted, a fragile hope taking root. She thought of her mother's voice, a memory from Ghana. "You carry our strength." That strength was her shield now, her weapon. Lena smiled, her eyes bright. "You're going to win this, Akosua. I see it in you." Akosua's chest tightened, gratitude mixing with the ache of her wounds. She looked at her twins, their tiny hands reaching for her, and felt a surge of love that eclipsed her fear. Lucas and Camille had tried to break her, but they'd only forged her into something stronger. She opened Maya's notebook, writing, "They stole my past, but my future is mine." The words were a vow, a promise to her daughters, to herself. She'd fight, not with hate, but with the unyielding power of a mother's heart. 853 words. The soft clatter of dishes in Hope Haven's communal kitchen barely reached Akosua Mensah as she sat on her cot, the weight of her twins, Amma and Adwoa, a steady warmth against her chest. Her long, straight hair hung loose, framing a face etched with both exhaustion and a burgeoning resolve. The cream-colored shawl, now a tattered emblem of her survival, draped over her shoulders as she rocked her daughters, their gentle breaths a quiet anthem against the storm of her heart. The legal aid meeting with Ms. Harper had lit a spark. She had a case, a chance to reclaim her stolen home, and her grandmother's heirloom necklace. But the fire within her burned hotter than hope. It was fueled by the sting of Lucas Warrick's betrayal and Camille Moreau's cruel theft. Their words, "Girls, worthless," cutting deeper than any blade. Akosua's fingers trembled as she clutched Maya's notebook, its pages a canvas for her pain and defiance. The shelter's morning hum, mothers soothing children, the hiss of a coffee maker, felt like a fragile shield against the memories that haunted her. Lucas's sneer, Camille's taunting laugh, the glint of her necklace on that traitor's throat. They swirled in her mind, each image a lash against her spirit. Yet beneath the hurt, a fierce love for her daughters anchored her, a love that whispered she was more than the burden Lucas had called her. She kissed Amma's forehead, then Adwoa's, their tiny faces a reminder of why she'd fight. "You're my strength," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion, "and I'll be yours." Maya's voice broke through, gentle but insistent. "You're up early," she said, leaning against the cot's frame, her braids catching the morning light. "Thinking about that lawyer?" Akosua nodded, her throat tight. "She says we've got a shot," she said, her voice low. "But it's not just the house or the necklace. It's them. Lucas, Camille. They plan to erase me, Maya, like I was nothing." Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back, her jaw set. "I need to be more than nothing. For them." She glanced at her twins, their innocent eyes stirring a fire she couldn't ignore. Maya sat beside her, her presence a quiet strength. "You're already more," she said. "You walked into their house, faced them down, with your babies in your arms. That's not nothing. That's a warrior." The word, warrior, struck Akosua like a chord, echoing her grandmother's stories of Ghanaian women who defied odds with unyielding hearts. She thought of her mother's voice, a memory from a crackling phone call. "You carry our fire, Akosua." That fire was all she had now, and she'd wield it. She opened the notebook, her pen scratching out words. "They tried to bury me, but I'm rising." Each stroke felt like a reclaiming of her soul. The shelter's door swung open, and Lena rushed in, her toddler trailing behind. "Akosua, you won't believe this," she said, breathless, holding out a crumpled flyer. "There's a job fair at the community center today. Nursing gigs, good ones. You in?" Akosua's heart leapt, a flicker of hope piercing her doubt. She'd been a nurse before Lucas, before the twins, before the world turned against her. Could she step back into that role, even now? Fear gnawed at her. Her resume was outdated, her confidence battered. But she looked at Amma and Adwoa, their tiny hands curled in sleep, and knew she had no choice. "I'm in," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The community center was a short walk from Hope Haven, its faded brick walls buzzing with voices and possibility. Akosua adjusted her shawl, the twins in a borrowed double stroller, and stepped into the crowded room. Booths lined the walls, recruiters in crisp shirts offering smiles that felt both kind and calculating. Her heart pounded as she approached a table marked Atlanta Community Clinic. The woman behind it, Dr. Ellis, had a warm gaze that put Akosua at ease. "You're a nurse?" Dr. Ellis asked, scanning Akosua's hastily printed resume. "Was," Akosua said, her voice catching. "Before life happened. But I'm ready to start again." She thought of Lucas's dismissal, Camille's mockery, and straightened. "I'm good at what I do, and I need this. For my girls." Dr. Ellis nodded, her eyes flicking to the twins. "I see strength in you," she said. "We need part-time nurses. No benefits yet, but it's a start. Can you handle it?" "Yes," Akosua said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. The offer was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild. She thought of her grandmother, who'd nursed neighbors through sickness with nothing but grit and love. That legacy lived in her now. Back at Hope Haven, Akosua fed the twins, her mind racing with possibilities and fear. The job was a step, but Lucas's threat, "You'll regret fighting us," loomed like a shadow. She opened the notebook, writing, "I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for you, Ama Adwoa." The words steadied her, a vow etched in ink. Lena sat nearby, her toddler drawing on a scrap of paper. "You got the job?" she asked, her eyes bright. "Part-time," Akosua said, a small smile breaking through. "It's something." "It's everything," Lena said. "You're building a life, Akosua. For them." She nodded at the twins, her voice thick with admiration. Akosua's chest tightened, gratitude mixing with the ache of her wounds. She looked at her daughters, their soft coos filling the air, and felt a surge of love that eclipsed her fear. Lucas and Camille had tried to shatter her, but they'd only forge her resolve. She'd work, fight, rise, not for revenge, but for the future she'd carve for her girls. The notebook lay open, her words a beacon. "My roots are fire, and I'll burn through their lies." The hum of Hope Haven's communal room lingered in Akosua Mensah's ears as she stepped into the Atlanta courthouse, her heart a drumbeat of fear and defiance. Ama and Adwoa rested in their stroller, their soft coos a fragile anchor against the storm within her. Her long, straight hair was pulled back, revealing eyes that burned with the pain of Lucas Warrick's betrayal and Camille Moreau's cruelty. The cream-colored shawl, now patched but still hers, draped over her shoulders, a symbol of her endurance. The emails she'd uncovered, the job at the community clinic, the legal aid flyer, they'd led her here, to this moment, where she'd face her betrayers in a fight for her home and her grandmother's heirloom necklace. Lucas's threat, "You'll regret fighting us," echoed, but Akosua's love for her daughters drowned it out. She wasn't broken, she was unbreakable. The courtroom's fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow, amplifying the knot in her chest. Ms. Harper, her lawyer, stood beside her, her navy blazer a quiet reassurance. Akosua's fingers trembled as she adjusted the stroller, her twins' innocent faces grounding her. The memory of Camille's taunt, "You're nothing, Akosua," and Lucas's cold dismissal of their daughters as worthless fueled a fire that refused to fade. She'd come to reclaim what was hers, not just a house or a necklace, but her dignity, her worth. The weight of the moment pressed down, but she stood tall, her heart pounding with a mother's fierce resolve. Lucas entered first, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the man who'd thrown her out. His eyes met hers, and for a fleeting moment, she saw a flicker of shame before his jaw hardened. Camille followed, her heels clicking, the stolen necklace glinting at her throat. Akosua's breath caught, her fingers itching to rip it free, but she clenched them, channeling her rage into silence. The judge, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, called the room to order, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Ms. Harper rose, her tone steady as she presented the emails. "Mr. Warrick and Ms. Moreau conspired to defraud Miss Mensah of her home," she said, holding up the printed pages. "They manipulated property records, exploiting her vulnerability as a new mother. And this necklace, she gestured to Camille, stolen from Ms. Mensah, a family heirloom of immense cultural value. Akosua's heart raced as the emails were read aloud, each word a lash. Camille's gloating, Lucas's agreement to move forward. Her cheeks burned with the humiliation of their betrayal laid bare, but she felt a surge of vindication. She wasn't invisible here. The courtroom saw her, heard her. She glanced at Amma and Adwoa, their tiny hands curled in sleep, and whispered to herself, "This is for you." Lucas's lawyer, a slick man in a pinstripe suit, stood, his voice dripping with condescension. "Ms. Mensah abandoned her responsibilities as a wife," he said, his words a calculated twist. "She was unstable, unfit to maintain the property. My client acted to protect his interests." Akosua's blood boiled, her hands trembling in her lap. Unstable? Unfit? The lies stung, but the judge's sharp gaze gave her hope. Ms. Harper countered, her voice fierce. "Ms. Mensah was a devoted wife and mother, targeted because she gave birth to daughters Mr. Warrick deemed worthless. These emails prove their intent." Camille shifted, her fingers brushing the necklace, her confidence cracking. Akosua locked eyes with her stare unwavering. "You took everything," she thought, her heart a mix of rage and grief. "But you won't take my truth." The room felt smaller, the air thick with the weight of her pain and the hope of justice. The judge called a recess, and Akosua stepped into the hallway, pushing the stroller. Lucas approached, his voice low. "Drop this, Akosua," he said, his eyes hard. "You're making a fool of yourself." Her heart lurched, but she stood her ground. "You made a fool of me," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You and Camille, but I'm not the one who'll be ashamed today." She turned away, her twin's soft breath steadying her. Camille lingered nearby, her eyes darting nervously. But Akosua ignored her focus on the fight ahead. Back in the courtroom, the judge's ruling came like a thunderclap. "The evidence is clear," she said. "The property transfer was fraudulent. The house is restored to Ms. Mensah's name." She turned to Camille, her voice sharp. "The necklace is to be returned immediately." Akosua's breath caught, tears welling as relief flooded her. She'd won, not just the house, but her voice. Camille unclasped the necklace, her hands shaking, and handed it to Miss Harper, who passed it to Akosua. The gold was warm against her fingers. A piece of her grandmother's spirit returned. She clutched it, her heart swelling with a mix of triumph and sorrow. Lucas's face was ashen, his defeat a quiet victory for her. Miss Harper squeezed her shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "You fought, and you won." Akosua nodded, her throat tight. "For them," she said, glancing at her twins. The victory was hers, but the scars remained. Lucas's betrayal, Camille's cruelty, the months of pain. She thought of her mother's words. "You carry our strength." That strength had carried her here, through the fire of betrayal to this moment of justice. As she left the courthouse, the Atlanta sun felt softer, less harsh. She held Amma and Adwoa close, the necklace now around her neck, its weight a reminder of her roots. The shelter awaited, but so did a future she'd build on her terms. Lucas and Camille had tried to bury her, but she'd risen, a warrior forged in pain and love. She whispered to her daughters, "We're going home," her voice a vow, her heart a beacon of resilience. The soft creak of Hope Haven's cot faded as Akosua Mensah packed her few belongings, her heart a tangle of triumph and lingering scars. Amma and Adwoa cooed in their stroller, their innocent eyes a beacon through the fog of her pain. Her long, straight hair fell over her shoulders, framing a face that bore the weight of Lucas Warrick's betrayal and Camille Moreau's cruelty, yet glowed with hard-won resilience. The cream-colored shawl, patched but defiant, draped over her as she clutched her grandmother's heirloom necklace, its gold warm against her skin, reclaimed from the courtroom's fire. The judge's ruling, her home restored, her truth acknowledged, had lifted a burden. But the wounds of being cast out for bearing daughters still bled. Akosua's love for her twins, fierce and unyielding, was her anchor, her reason to rise. The Atlanta sun cast a gentle glow as she stepped out of the shelter, Maya and Lena by her side, their presence a quiet strength. You're really going back to that house? Lena asked, her toddler tugging at her hand, her voice thick with awe. Akosua nodded, her throat tight. It's not just a house, she said, her voice soft but firm. It's their future. She glanced at Amma and Adwoa, their tiny hands reaching for her, and felt a surge of love that drowned out the echo of Lucas's words. You're a burden. The memory of Camille's taunt. Girls? Worthless. Still stung, but the courtroom victory had shifted something within her. She wasn't the woman they'd tried to break. She was a mother, a warrior, a daughter of Ghana's unyielding spirit. The bus ride to Buckhead was quiet, the city's hum a distant backdrop to her racing thoughts. She'd won the house, the necklace, but the cost was etched in her heart. Months of betrayal, nights in the shelter, the shame of standing on those steps. Her fingers traced the necklace, its weight a reminder of her grandmother's stories, tales of women who'd turned pain into power. You are enough, her grandmother had said, and Akosua clung to those words now, her resolve a fire that refused to fade. The house loomed as she approached, its glass windows and sleek lines no longer a cage but a canvas for her new beginning. She hesitated at the door, the key Ms. Harper had given her heavy in her hand. Memories flooded back. Lucas's laughter, their first dance in the living room, the kente cloth they'd hung together. Those moments were ghosts now, overshadowed by his betrayal. She unlocked the door, her heart pounding, and stepped inside. The air was stale, the silence heavy. The living room, once vibrant, felt hollow, its minimalist decor a reminder of the life she'd lost. But Akosua saw possibility in the emptiness. She pushed the stroller forward, Amma and Adwoa's soft coos filling the space with life. This is ours now, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She hung a photo of her twins on the wall, their smiling faces a declaration of her reclaiming. Maya, who'd insisted on coming, set a box of Akosua's belongings on the counter. It's yours again, she said, her eyes bright. You fought for this, Akosua. Don't forget that. Tears welled, but Akosua smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, she said, her voice thick. You and Lena, this place. She gestured to the shelter's memory. You gave me a home when I had none. Maya hugged her, careful not to disturb the twins. You gave yourself a home, she said. You're stronger than you know. The day unfolded in a blur of unpacking and planning. Akosua cleaned the kitchen, its granite counters gleaming under her touch, and set up a small corner for Amma and Adwoa's crib. She found a letter slipped under the door. Lucas's handwriting unmistakable. I'm sorry, it read. I was wrong. Her heart lurched, a mix of anger and pity stirring. She thought of his ashen face in court, Camille's trembling hands as she surrendered the necklace. They'd lost, but their apologies meant nothing. She tore the letter, letting the pieces fall, her heart lighter with each rip. As evening fell, Akosua prepared for the twins' first birthday, a celebration she'd dreamed of in this house. She invited Maya, Lena, and a few women from Hope Haven, their laughter filling the space with warmth. She cooked jollof rice, the recipe her mother had taught her, its spicy aroma a bridge to her Ghanaian roots. She sang a folk song to Amma and Adwoa, the melody weaving through the room, a testament to her heritage. The necklace gleamed at her throat, a symbol of her victory, her strength. Lena raised a glass of juice, her eyes shining. To Akosua, she said, a mother, a fighter, a damn force. The women cheered, and Akosua's chest tightened, gratitude and pride overwhelming her. She looked at her twins, clapping their tiny hands, and felt a love so fierce it eclipsed the pain of the past. Lucas and Camille had tried to shatter her, but they'd only forged her into something stronger. She opened Maya's notebook, now nearly full, and wrote, They thought they could break me. They only made me whole. As the party wound down, Akosua stood at the window, the Atlanta skyline glowing under the night sky. She held Amma and Adwoa, their warmth a promise of tomorrow. She'd rebuilt her life, not for revenge, but for her daughters, for the legacy in her blood. The road ahead was hers to shape, and she'd walk it with fire in her heart, a warrior reborn in love. As Akosua Mensah's journey in Shattered Vows closes, Her resilience and love for Amma and Adwoa light a path through betrayal shadows. Her story, of rising from the ashes of Lucas and Camille's cruelty, invites you to reflect. What did her fight stir in you? Did her strength inspire or her pain resonate? Share your thoughts, your feelings. Let her fire spark your own. Thank you for walking this emotional road with Akosua, for feeling her heart's every beat. Until we meet again in another tale, carry her courage with you. 87 words.